preparing. There we go. We should be live now.
I can see that. Yay.
Yay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a branch of Laurels. I am a Shaxi from Ontier. I am a member of the Order of the Laurel. And tonight, my guest is Magnifica, Tulia Alori.
Hello.
Hello. And she is a Laurel from the West Kingdom. You may also recognize her as one of the co-hosts of Between Two Peers.
Yeah.
Yay. And I probably have told you this before, but our show would not exist without you.
You've never told me that. That's cool.
Oh, yeah, without you having the idea for Between Two Peers and us watching the two of you and going, hey, Ontier could use that and we could do some stuff. We should do that too. And so we hopped on your bandwagon of fabulous.
That's awesome. Yay.
So thank you.
No, thank you.
So usually start these off by asking what your SCA origin story is. How did you find the SCA and what made you fall in love with it?
Okay, so I found the SCA, well, let me back up. No, there is too much. So when I was 12, my mother dragged me kicking and screaming to my first Renaissance fair in Northern California. That was the blessed memory Black Point Northern Renaissance Pleasure Fair in Novato, and it was a highlight I did not know I wanted in my life until I went there. And like I said, my mother dragged me kicking and screaming. I was so not excited about this dumb thing that she wanted me to do. I have a diary entry somewhere that probably in my mother's basement. I need to go see if I can dig it out. That is literally just me, page after page, scrawling about how much I'm going to hate this stupid Renaissance fair. It's going to suck. It's going to be boring. I'm going to have to wear a smelly costume and meh, you know. And of course, the moment we get on site and I see it and I realize what it is, I fell in love with the idea of this kind of historical reenactment thing. And so I did Ren Fair kind of mostly as a patron, but very heavily involved patron for about 3 years. And my first boyfriend, when I was a freshman in high school, was a fellow nerd. And he said, hey, if you like Ren Fair, you like this thing called the SCA. And I'm like, yeah, right. Sword carrying assholes. No, I know all about them. I am going to hate it. But he invited me to my first event. That was Beltane in 1993. And I, again, thought I was going to hate this thing. I showed up and next thing I know, I am all in. I just 100% like, let me just dive head first. I want to do this for the rest of my life. I don't care what it takes. So my mother had a few more years of like hauling me around to various SCA events and kind of keeping a watchful eye on me at a respectful distance as I just flailed around and rolled in it and had a crazy fun time with my other teenage friends. And so, yeah, ever since then, I've taken a few breaks over the years, a couple of, you know, I think my longest kind of hiatus was about 5 years in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. I got very burnt out after I held my very first office. And so I needed to just take a big break and I kind of walked away from it. And I kind of thought, yeah, I can put all that, you know, immature stuff behind me. And then I got married, got divorced, and then realized I really missed the immature stuff. So, yeah, I came back to the SCA in, I think, 2003. And I've just never really stopped ever since then. It's been all in. And I joke now that it's no longer a hobby, it's a lifestyle. Maybe, hopefully a little not as culty as I think that my non-SCA friends think I am. But you know, we have a healthy relationship, the SCA and I, right?
You hope so. Every once in a while you have to step back and reevaluate.
Oh yeah. But, yeah, I mean, and I do that quite a bit. And every single time things are getting crazy, which they inevitably will do, and I get very like emotionally caught up in all of it, and then I have to take a giant step back and realize that this is spinning out of control and it's really not that bad. So yeah.
I hear you on
Yeah.
that. So do you think it was seeing people in costumes? Was it the costumes that just was super exciting?
Oh my God, it was kind of everything though. A big part of it was the costumes from like day one. My mother was is a seamstress, but you know, when I was a kid, she sewed all of my Halloween costumes, and they were always very elaborate, themed costumes. And so Halloween was a big deal. And then my dress up box as a kid was really like had a lot of really cool, fun stuff in it. And I think her reasoning was that she grew up very poor, and so she felt that she wasn't going to deprive her daughters of any sort of like imaginative, fun fantasy play that they wanted to do. So my sister, younger sister, and I always had a very like well-equipped uh, box of costumes at our disposal at any given time. And so I just loved the idea of always wanting to be a princess, of course. That just seemed like a logical conclusion. My mundane name is Sarah. That means princess. Therefore, it isn't, goes without saying that I was born for this role in my life. So when I found out about the SCA, or Ren Fair first and then the SCA, and then I saw, oh my God, I could actually do this like as a real thing with other people that do this as a real thing. Like we can play dress up together. I completely was hooked on that idea. Yeah, so costumes absolutely number one like thing that kind of drew me in initially. The thing that got me versus Ren Fair, so Ren Fair I liken to like, they're the theater geeks in the high school, and the SCA is the like, chess club. It's they're very similar, but they're very, very different mentality. If you're not, you don't want to be on stage all the time and portraying a character, and then kind of just you take the costume and the character off and you put them away and it's gone until you do take them out and put it on again. That to me, like I hate being on stage. I am a performer, but I'm only under duress really. So I prefer backstage. I like to, I like making costumes. I like wearing costumes. I like hanging out with my friends and having social time. And I also so the SCA kind of fit really well with my my personality, where I was like, I wanted to just hang out with people that kind of geeked on the same level that I was geeking on, and get wrapped up in this whole society, this whole culture, that I thought was really, really kind of cool. And there's so many times I take a step back from it, even today, and just a little bit of distance from what the SCA is, and go, "Oh my God, we are so weird." Like, people must look at us and be like, oh, "What?" I watched Night Riders for the first time last week, and that was the first thing out of my mouth was, "Oh my God!" And then the second thing was, "Oh God, that's exactly what we look like to other people."
I ran into one of my neighbors who lives kind of behind in kitty corner from us, and he can hear my husband every night hitting the bell and talking loudly about fighting techniques on Zoom in the backyard. And he walked by our house and he said, "Is your husband like, is he like sword fighting, and what is he doing in the backyard?" And I started to explain it to him, and he said, "Oh, like role models." And I'm like,
"Oh my gosh."
"Yep, just like role models."
Oh my God, that's amazing. That's a great movie. Also, but I think role models, if you combine role models and Night Riders, you do get a really good approximation of kind of the culture of the SCA, and like the good parts and the bad parts, and then of course the ridiculous parts in the middle of all of it.
Yeah, whenever my husband or I is taking the SCA too seriously, we look at each other and we say, "Exit my burger hole." And it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's right. I'm getting too
I loved it.
too much. Gotta bring it down a notch.
Yep. Yep.
So I think it's really ironic that you say that you don't like being on stage, and yet and I would say the same thing, but we have spent the last year on stage,
Yeah.
basically. Wow.
Yeah. It's draining. It's really exhausting. I basically, so one of those things that goes back to childhood, where I was always in the theater group. I was always auditioning for plays and musicals and performing in choirs and doing all of this like really cool stuff. Like I had a really cool childhood. I don't talk a lot about it, but there was this like wealth of opportunity for me to just be creatively expressive without kind of any judgment. Like anything that I wanted to do, my mom was like, cool, let's do it. And I got to try it and decide if I didn't like it, or I really loved it. So that was great. The hardest part though is that I realized pretty quickly that I don't have the sort of I guess mental makeup that can handle being on stage all the time, like, performing all the time, the rejection of auditions. I couldn't take it.
Mm.
And so I just basically stopped altogether. I was basically like, and that's when, right around that same age that I discovered the SCA and I started to learn how to sew, I realized I really like costuming. So that became like my mundane focus for a long, long time. I got my undergraduate degree in clothing and textile design. And
Where did you get that?
UC Davis.
Wow.
Yeah, they don't have that. Well, they have a similar program now. My group of cohorts, we graduated in 2006. We were one of the last ones to graduate through this program at Davis. It was design, but it was under the purview of ag and environmental sciences. It wasn't a theater degree, which was a big reason I liked that, because they had a separate theater costuming track in the theater department. But I wanted to do design. I really wanted to focus on textile and clothing design in particular. And that was housed under ag and environmental sciences. So I have a Bachelor of Science degree in textile arts, basically. Which is it's not very common anymore. Mostly you see them, they're Bachelor of Arts, they're rolled into a theater program or an arts program nowadays. And Davis ultimately ended up doing that and disbanded that program that I graduated from. It's now part of the arts department, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think it's theater department. I've lost touch with a lot of my
That's super cool. I wish that I had known that existed.
Yeah. When I was looking for these things, I was a little bit older too. It took me a while to kind of figure out what I wanted to do and what I wanted to focus on. So I was one of these people that I graduated high school when I was 16 and then spent the next like 10 years basically farting around in community college, just taking all the classes because it's fun, it's cheap. Having a great time just learning about random stuff. And I could never really figure out what I wanted to do. I knew what I liked doing. I knew that I liked costume. I knew that I liked history, but I didn't know necessarily how to pull that into like a real world thing. And then when I started looking at it, finally started to knuckle down around the age of 23, 24. And I wanted to find a program either in anthropology or in textile design or clothing design. And because there's nothing that really combined those two at the time. Unless I wanted to go to like the UK, there were some programs there. There was a program at I think it's out in it's not fit it's not FITM, it's State University of New York. I used to have something that was very similar to like what I was looking for, but I didn't want to go all the way to New York or England. Or actually at the time there was a theater arts program in Fairbanks, Alaska that was run by a costumer that I followed online like in the very, very early days of the internet. She built this like whole costume program, but it was a costume history program at Fairbanks, which was another option. But again, I didn't really want to go that far. So I found what was the closest. And when I was living in Sacramento, as you know, I was born and raised here. The closest thing was University of California, Davis, which is right up the road. And they have a phenomenal medieval history program, medieval culture program there. But also they had this really cool design program that was very small. And that's why I liked it, because it was also, I think there was about 20 people in my cohort. And Davis is a massive school. There's 30,000 students or something. And to have a class that was all that tight and that small was really unique and really, really cool. And I got a lot of individual attention, some good, some bad. I learned a lot. And I had a great time. Yeah.
Very cool. What led you to later period clothing? What?
Uh, I think that it 100% had to do with the Renaissance Fair. I was at a very impressionable age, and I remember just seeing all the ladies in the court with their big gowns and their ruffs and their French hoods, and they looked amazing, and their yards of velvet and silk and pearls everywhere, and I just was dazzled. And so I begged my mom to make me a Nobles costume. Somewhere I have photos of it. I realized I didn't actually have them to, share today, but she made me this great costume. It was out of corduroy and upholstery material for like the stomacher that was sewn in the front. I thought I was the shit in that. I was like, I am, yes, it is me, your princess. And then every single year that we did Ren Fair, I'd make my mother make me another costume, beg her to make another costume. And then when we found the SCA, she was like, all right, if we're going to be doing this like once a month and you want a new costume for every single event you go to, you're going to have to learn how to sew. so I learned how to sew, and I never really looked back. And I made a lot of crap. I think my first real costume that I really felt came together and looked right, I think I was about 22 when that happened. So 15 to 22, a lot of experimentation, a lot of expensive fabric ruined. I got there eventually. And then from about 22 on, I guess for the last 20 years now, give or take, I've just really kind of gone the as deep as I feel like I can go in late period and Elizabethan clothing. I switched topics right before I got Laurel. I switched emphasis onto Venetian clothing, upper class Venetian clothing in the 16th century, and got very excited about that for a long time. And then suddenly my ability to wear corsets and 5 layers of heavy fabric completely left. I started getting really bad heat exhaustion at events, started getting really bad migraines, and I just was so uncomfortable going to events in all of the layers of fabulousness that I realized I had to stop. My health depended on it.
Yeah.
So I've switched to Slavic now, completely, 1,000 years later or earlier. And well, maybe not quite 1,000, but ish. But yeah, I'm loving this look now, and I'm enjoying it, and it's easy to wear, and it's comfortable, and I'm not dying every single event. So
yeah, I started out Elizabethan as well, and I had a day that I had 16 hours in a corset doing retinue for one of my best friends who it was just she and I and the baby, and I was taking care of the baby. And when we got back to the hotel room, I had a full-on panic attack, and she had to cut me out of it. And I have not had one on since. So
I have had I am trussed into this outfit. I can't get myself out panic attack. That's real. That's a real thing. Yeah. Now all my costumes, if I do late period, they all will lace up the front. Or on the side where I can access them really easily, and just I've done this where I'm starting to get a little anxious and a little panicky, and I just clip the laces and pull them out and done. But, yeah, the hazards of wearing late period that they don't really talk about. Not great for your health sometimes.
But it looks so cool. Let's look at some of the pictures so that people can see what we're talking about.
Okay. So this is my very first day at my very first Ren Fair, the one I didn't want to go to that I thought was going to be really stupid. So I'm with my, the little boy is kind of my stepbrother. Our parents never actually married, but we grew up together. The little girl in the middle is my little sister, and that's me on the left. Just rocking that unfortunate Biggins so hard. That coin doing nothing for me over there. But and that was actually probably one of the motivating factors in me wanting to, get better garb, was because this rented garb, it just was not, it didn't suit me. So, but yeah, that's outside the Compass Rose, I think, was the booth that rented costumes at the time, and you
got a rockin' jester outfit here.
And you want to know a funny story? These costumes actually show up, especially the one that Nathan, my stepbrother, he's wearing, show up in various movies. There was a movie that MST3K covered years and years and years ago. And now I'm completely blanking on it. It's something like Wizards. But it was shot at Northern Ren Fair, and they used a lot of the costumes, including the one that he's wearing. So funny story. Yeah. Yeah, this is, I was probably 19 in this photo, 18 or 19 in this photo. I know I look like I was 12 until I was about 25. But you also see how short I am. The people on either side of me are normal sized. I am not. That was my friend April in green. My mother actually made April that dress, and my another Sarah, who was on my right or left, I guess, in the photo, right on the photo, and me in the middle wearing a gown that I based off of one of the gowns in Queen Margot, which I was obsessed with at the time. And hold on just a quick second. Would you come in here, Your Grace? Special guest star.
Hello.
Thelonious Monk shirt.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I like it.
Would you like anything from me?
Yes, I would. Can you bring me a Sazerac?
Yes.
Okay. And
Sazerac.
can you put it in the glow in the dark glass?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
Woo!
Yeah. It's
Love you guys.
Love you too.
I love
baby.
you guys so hard.
Hard. But yeah, so this was actually taken at an event in Marysville, California. That was this one would have been probably Ducal Prize Tourney, which is an institution on the Western calendar that happens on Labor Day weekend, and it was hot AF. I'm wearing an entirely silk gown and dying, but I was also, like I said, 18 or 19 at the time, and well, don't care, look fabulous, pew pew. So little did I know that was going to go away in about 20 years, that ability.
I've heard you talk about being a fringy player, but I look at this costume that you're wearing, and what?
You don't see that. Well, okay, so funny story. I was a fringy, and I identified happily as it. I know some people don't really care for the term, but I always thought it fit for what I was doing in the SCA, which was hanging out on the fringe of the event and having this great old time with my friends that really didn't apply to anything that was happening in the mainstream part. So that was for about like 2 or 3 years. I was content to do that. When I turned 18, I kind of got like this moment of, I want to be serious about the SCA now, So I started really trying harder to dress more historically accurately for whatever little persona that I had wrapped up in my brain at the time. And I wanted my friends, my household, to follow along, but they were very, very entrenched in this, idea of, essentially they all wanted to be like Braveheart because that had just come out, and everybody needed to be in kilts, and they didn't want me telling them that kilts aren't period. So I started to drift away. Right around this time, I sort of started to drift away. And I ended up holding office as Bard of Sinagua. I won the Bard of Sinagua contest. Sinagua, of course, is a principality here in the West. So I got to be, kind of a big deal in my little local area, and well, not little local. Sinagua was actually huge compared to the Mists, but I got to be a big deal for the first time in my life, and I earned something on my own merits. I got my AOA and my Rose Leaf, which is the West Kingdom's Arts Award, kind of first tier Arts Award. after, for doing Bard of Sinagua, I was the youngest Bard of Sinagua that had ever held office. And I was just a little spitfire of like, huge opinions and sass. And I wanted to wear fabulous costumes all the time. And I'm sure people thought I was tedious as hell. Just like, oh, you're too cute, But yeah, I was very fringy at the time. Yeah. This is a costume that I made. Actually, this is the coolest. I still have this doublet. It's leather with a red. It's not silk, but it's like a fail, which is sort of a ribbed, normally made out of silk, but this one I think was polyester or something, lined in this red fabric. And the back actually has a cut work white Tudor rose with its reverse applique, where I put a white layer of leather down and then cut worked a rose, or stitched around and then cut out the negative space basically to reveal the white underneath. And it was kind of my little piratey look that I felt very piratey. This was taken at the cemetery down the street from my house where I grew up, where almost all of my photos from this era were taken at, because I was also like little gothy girl who thought she was tragic all the time.
Cemeteries are cool, man.
Oh yeah, I'm like, I'm just gonna go to the cemetery and I'm gonna sit on the roof of the mausoleum and ponder. I mean, like I said, I'm pretty sure people thought it was really tedious. This is another photo from the cemetery, actually same day. I think it was a photo shoot that my friend was doing with me. And this was kind of my first like foray into something vaguely 14th century. It was princess seams. It was, made from a McCall's pattern for like a princess seam, wedding dress or something. And I just thought I was the shiz. Really did.
It's super cute.
It is super cute. And I wore it for a long time. I actually wore that, both of those for a long time. This is also same basic time frame. Probably again, like 18 or 19 in this photo. This was my hoop blonde, my first attempt at a hoop blonde. And this was taken at one of my favorite sites that we unfortunately can't use anymore. This was at Van Vleck Ranch. I think it was a March Crown. And it's kind of like the quintessential, what I think of Central Valley, California looks like in my mind, is these oak trees, the scrub oak and the dead grass, and it's only March. And at this point, it's probably hot AF. But I really, really loved that outfit. I kind of outgrew it almost immediately, though. I made it just ever so slightly too small. And then I kind of had another, growth spurt, late teens growth spurt. And I so unfortunately couldn't wear it for very long. But the houppelande part was actually a bolero, that little bit on the front where there's like a big medallion here. It's a pin that has like Celtic knotwork horses in it. So cool. I thought I was so freaking cool. But it was like basically like a little bolero that I just pinned kind of under my bust, and had turned it back, the opening back, so you could see the lining. And that was sort of this, I don't know what I was doing. I was whipping. It was fun.
I think stuff like that is, I'm going to stop for a minute.
Sure.
I think that those are really respectable beginning costumes, and maybe even respectable longtime player costumes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I found my art. My art was very early on, very evident. It was going to be sewing. It was going to be costuming, because it clicked with me the way nothing really ever had. And like I struggled with math until I learned sewing, and then I had a reason to kind of understand, like, well, fractions, that's why they're important to learn.
Oh.
Right? I still struggle with math, but man, I know my fractions really well. So but I think I did go through a phase, full disclosure, I totally went through a phase where I was very snobby about, historical accuracy, and everybody has to be historically accurate. And this was right around the time that my old group of friends were like, no, Braveheart, woohoo! And so I, obviously started to kind of intellectually drift away. And then but now that I'm older, I've been around for a long time, and I've chilled the fuck out about a lot of this stuff. And I realized that the idea is go and have fun in what you can afford, what you can wear, what you can make, what's comfortable. Thank you. And
Sazerac, thank you.
but yeah, just go and do what you can with what you've got and enjoy. If you feel beautiful in it, if you feel handsome in it, if you feel powerful in it, like just go on and rock your bad self. And there's this, the SCA has a whole lot of baggage around all of this, and some of it is very deserved, especially when it comes to Laurels snarking, new people or people that aren't as skilled in a specific area. I do think that, yeah, we totally need to do better and just encourage people to find their joy. And it may not look like my joy, and my joy may not look like your joy, but we're all enjoying ourselves with each other. So don't make somebody's life crappy just because you're like, well, that's not period. Like, F you. If I could have told myself at that, not me now, drop me back 20 years ago and just be like, F you, Sarah. Like, that was not cool.
Just be kind. Yeah, I think as we go back to in-person, and I've made some kind of declarations with myself. And one of them is I'm going to let go of hand finishing all of my family's garb.
Oh, yeah, that's a hard one.
Because
that's a really hard one.
It's a family of 4, and my son is 6'5".
That's a lot of sewing.
And that's some long ass seams.
I have one of my best friends is 6 feet tall, and she always yells at me because I'm so short. I can finish my hand sewn gowns in half the time that it takes her to sew like one seam. I'm like, I've sewn 5. I just don't have a lot of fabric there. It's not a lot of length. But yeah, no, I feel you on that too. I've over the years gone from hand sewing everything inside and out, historical technique, all of that stuff, to I'm going to take as many shortcuts as I can, and I'm going to be okay with it, because my priorities now are not to be the most historically accurate person. My priorities really are to be the most accessible person as a peer for other people, and guide them, and not be somebody that they should be afraid of or think that's going to judge them. So,
and my time is better spent teaching someone how to make clothes for themselves than it is hand sewing.
Yeah.
A bunch of seams that I can French seam or serge.
Oh my God, you can pry my serger out of my cold dead hands. I am not giving that up. Like, and I do tell people too, like, one of the things that I try to make a pretty clear is I am not going to judge you unless it's in a competition setting and I am a judge, and that is my job. But it's not judging you, it's judging the material, it's judging the thing that you've made. Yeah. Also, what I think is appropriate for just coming to an SCA event and enjoying yourself is not necessarily appropriate for a competition level entry. So that there is a distinction in my world, and I'm only going to offer help or opinions or anything to somebody if they ask for it. I don't, unless it's just if they just want an add a boy, add a girl, add a you, like if that's what that person wants, I'm happy, because I do believe that they're, if they're enjoying themselves and they're learning and they're excited about it, like that's really what I care about. Not the, oh, you sewed this seam a little wonky and didn't press this or whatever, like that. I can be that petty, but it's not worth it to me emotionally, and I see how much harm it causes when other people do that. So I try to really not engage in that anymore, and I admit it.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Same. And I've had my soul crushed, even as a Laurel, by other Laurels who, I after I was elevated, I pretty much stopped sewing for myself and just did costuming for Royals.
Right.
So my personal kit was not super fancy, and I didn't have all of the accoutrement that when it went with everything, because all of my time was invested in either raising kids or costuming for other people.
Mhm.
And there were some people that were very unkind about that.
Yeah.
And that's not cool. The mean girl thing is not.
Oh, I've been accused of being a mean girl. A funny story. So I did a lot of other costume organizations other than the SCA and Ren Fair. For a long time, I was very involved in Costume College, which is on the West Coast, especially at the time, it was mostly just centered on California, but then the internet, social media blew it up, and now people are coming in from all over the world to go to this. It's not really a convention. It's sort of turning that way now, but it's a 3 days of classes on various topics in costuming, and then of course people sitting around geeking out about costuming. And I have a very, very tight friend group that came out of years of just going and hanging out with these people. And what happened was I ended up getting, and all of us actually ended up getting branded mean girls. They saw us as exclusive. And so we used to joke about that. We used to say, oh, you're just exclusive bitches. Like that was our way of trying to, take ownership of it or take a little bit back from it. But it just blew up and it got really bad. And I've realized that like once somebody decides that you're a bitch, for any reason, you can't just undo that. So I've decided in the SCA to like kind of take what I learned from that experience and figure out ways to just be more inclusive, more welcoming, more friendly. And yeah, I have a bad day, but it takes nothing for me to smile at somebody instead of snap at them or walk by without acknowledging them or something. And I think it's working because the SCA seems to like me. So, but yeah.
And not letting things go by, and because they get bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And conversations where you say, hey, it seems like I upset you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that.
Oh yeah.
They're really hard to have, but once they've been had,
oh, I stuck my foot in it huge this weekend. I don't mind being honest about it, because again, that's the other part of this policy that I have in the SCA based on how I've learned, not to be or to not let myself be perceived, from other organizations I've been involved in, is to just admit when you're wrong and apologize. And I had a situation this weekend where that was exactly what happened. A friend of mine got horribly hurt by something that I had said. And I had said it in frustration. I had not directed it at them. I didn't even think they were reading what I was writing at the time. And they reached out and they were just like, you really, really hurt me. And I went, oh my God, I effed up hard. And I'm so sorry. That was not what I meant. I spoke out of frustration, blah, 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 and we patched it up, and that's great. Sometimes they don't patch it up. Honestly, I've had people that have been horribly offended by something I said off the cuff that are just like, no, I'm done with you. And I'm, it hurts, but also fair. Boundaries are good if they need to maintain the boundaries, because and my apology is just never going to help or never going to change things, then that's the way it's going to be. And I wish them well. I'm not going to sit here and beat myself up over it forever, because you can't do anything, in those situations. You just got to let them go. And it's an evolutionary process, and it's hard. It's not easy, but I do try to own my mistakes when they happen, and they do happen.
And it's one of the things that I really love about the SCA is, we talked about, you talked about, in a Ren fair, you put on this costume and you become this person, and then you take the costume off and then you're not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And in my experience in the SCA, you are who you are. You're in funny clothing, but you are who you are, and you are growing and self-bettering with this incredible group of people who are also doing the same. And I think that's one of the biggest, awesomest, most fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm not using my language very well tonight. Things is having that kind of place to do that.
Exactly. And I love that part of the SCA. I think that was something that I tapped into very early on. And honestly, I think I tapped into it pretty much my very first event. And I saw not just people running around in costumes, but I saw lords and ladies and kings and queens and princes and princesses. And, you know, this whole array of I'm getting chills thinking about it, actually, this whole amazing display of belief in a system and that supported each other in that. And I was just swept off my feet by this idea. In fact, my very first event, it literally, the guy who was about to be crowned king lined his retinue up, and they were on horses and banners and everything. They had to line up more or less in my camp. So like I wake up in the morning and I poke my head out of the tent, and here's like this massive stretch of people in fabulous costumes on horseback with banners and weapons and all this amazingness. And I just, you know, eyes huge as saucers. And the coolest part about it, though, was the guy who was getting crowned king sees my mother. My mother comes up and is like, what's going on? You know, like, you're literally in the middle of our camp. What is happening? And he dismounts and he basically is like, I'm really sorry, my lady. This was really the only place that we could line our, you know, our entire retinue up and everything. And we'll only be here for a few minutes. We won't be an imposition on you at all. You know, blah, 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 like just very nicely, courteously, kindly kind of explaining what's about to happen, because he could tell we were new. And then sure enough, they get called and everybody just kind of, you know, marches off. And we find out later, oh, that was King Christian, you know, guy who's about ready to get crowned king. And turns out so many of my friends that are now my like the guy I'm in love with and dating was in that retinue. Like so many of my closest friends were in that retinue, and I didn't know that then. Like I had no idea that that was that, but I just saw the magic in that moment and was so just captivated. And I think about that a lot, like when the SCA is getting like really on my nerves and things crappy. I think about like, well, you know, there was that moment where you saw the magic actually happening, and it was really cool. Can you like figure out how to get that back? You know?
Yeah. And help make that magic for other people too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's it's one of the things that when you're new, you don't realize how much work goes into making all that magic.
Right. Yeah, it takes a lot.
It's a lot of work.
Speaking now from the other side of that, you know, fence, where I'm a peer, I am well established, I am, you know, like I'm consort to a duke, like, you know, like I am the establishment now. Like before, that version of Tulia was not the establishment. She was just a punk rock little kid, basically, or thought she was anyway. and didn't want to be part of the establishment, and thought that, you know, whatever, you know, the man sucks. But at the same time was super, super enchanted by the establishment and like all of the magic that could hold, and how everybody believed in it, like really believed in it. And I'm not religious, and I did go to church as a kid, and I saw, you know, of course, everybody believed in this thing, and I just never felt right. It never felt authentic. It never felt like, I didn't feel believable until I got to the SCA. And I think that's kind of maybe it's a little bit like my religion. Okay, maybe it is sounding cultier and cultier the more I talk about it. But
well, I think that we have rituals
Yeah.
and rites of passage that don't exist in the real world. And I think culturally, that's a really important thing for human beings to have.
Oh,
It's
for
why
real,
people get into church, and it's why people get into the SCA.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is. You know, my sister used to do SCA with me when she was a kid, but the moment that I was old enough to do it myself without my mother having to monitor me 24/7, because that was still a thing almost 30 years ago, my sister stopped playing, and she always was just like, you know, rolling her eyes at it, like this is just the dumbest shit she's ever seen in her entire life. And she still, I don't think, can understand like how I got really excited about it to the point where it's like my whole life.
Yeah.
But then, you know, she and I used to have these arguments about it. She's like, why do you want to put clothes on and pretend to be somebody else? And I'm doing this is who I am, you know. It's not a face. This is who I really am. I'm a 16th century courtesan. Shut up. Arguments when we're like 30 doing this. But the irony, of course, is Alex, she's actually an actress. She lives in Hollywood. Like, and I just always be like, well, why do you want to pretend to be somebody else? And finally, as adults, we've had a mature conversation around it. And she kind of summed it up. She said, well, I just can't not do this. I feel called in my very soul to do this. And I'm like, bingo, that's exactly the way I feel about the SCA. It speaks to me, and I can't imagine myself not doing it, not being a part of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I had a really cool experience this weekend. My niece graduated high school in Bozeman, Montana, and my sister and my other niece flew out there to witness that. And there's a sister between Rifkin and I. And she went and watched Misty fight for the first time.
oh,
And she FaceTimed me, and I said, so how you doing? How's it, are you bored? And she's like, no, this is amazing. I can't stop crying. I'm so proud of her.
that's awesome. That's so cool, isn't it? Like, you're like, yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, it's watching Rifkin fight is like watching her in her element. It's watching her do
That's awesome.
the thing that brings her absolute joy. And it's that moving, to see that. And it's just, I feel the same way when I watch my husband, because he's the same way.
That's exactly the same thing. When I watched Thorfinn fight, and I love watching fighting. Like, this is something that I really kind of caught me off guard, because as someone who grew up on the fringe, and as somebody who had turned into somebody who was more arts driven than in any of the martial activities, there was always this, maybe it just goes back to like gender roles. There was always this expectation that I, as an artistic woman, would not be interested in fighting at all. Like, it would be boring. And we would go to, I go to like fighter practices where I would literally just want to watch the fighting. And I would have people coming up to me, usually other women, who would be like, oh, this is so boring. Let's go talk about sewing. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about sewing. No, that is not interesting to me right now. Like, what I want to do is watch these people fight. Like, I find it very, very fascinating. And also, it's fun to watch somebody who is so happy doing it. Like, gets so much joy out of it. Again, I think that's that I see somebody having joy with it, and I want to like have the joy with them,
Yeah.
So,
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
I love
it applies to watching even parts of the STA that maybe I'm not enmeshed in. Like, you go to the archery range and you watch the joy that people get doing that, and equestrian, and cut and thrust and rapier, and there's so many little places in the STA to find that joy. It's pretty cool.
It is kind of magical that the SCA offers that, which, and there are other organizations out there similar, but they're just different enough that I'm like, yeah, actually, I feel that this one better suits me, like me and my interests and my values and my personal ideology, like my kind of little psychological makeup for whatever it is. It really just
it works.
It works. It clicks. And maybe somebody else sees that as like Renaissance fairs or Dagger Here, or any of the other numerous different LARPing, cosplay, like people get into those things, and good for them, and they can come and visit. I'm happy. I don't care if like some cosplay kids show up or LARPers show up and they want to check out the SCA. Like, come on in, like, see what we're all about. Maybe you'll stick around.
Yeah. My son is super into online gaming, and here in particular, it's like all he does. And part of my evil plan to entice him back into playing the SCA is to make him a costume from one of his games.
There you go.
And
yeah.
He's going to wear it to an event, and that's going to be fine. And if some other gaming kid sees that and that makes him feel comfortable in the SCA,
there you go. Yeah. And anybody that says anything about it, like, come and find me, I will fight you. And I'm mean. And just because you think I'm short doesn't mean I won't, like, I'll scrape. I am not afraid. Don't let this child's like enthusiasm get destroyed straight out of the gate. And yeah, that's the other thing. I used to joke too that I was a little fringy in elf ears and combat boots. And the elf ears part was a little bit like, that's a bit of an exaggeration. I always wanted a really nice pair of elf ears, but could never really get them in the like early 90s. But I for sure was in the combat boots, and I was out there like with my long hair and just like, but
yeah, we all start somewhere. So let's go ahead and look at some more of your SCA life and some of your costumes. And everything is all mixed up time-wise, so we'll just kind of.
So this is my bestie, Viscountess Ciela, and me. We are at March Crown, I think 2019. And I'm holding Thorfinn's fighter card right there, the list card, along with my coffee, because it was probably taken pretty early in the day. And I think we were just watching the fighting, and we both look pretty contemplative, but I think we're just hanging out, watching the fighting. And Ciela and I are very close. And, as you can tell, she's got her arm wrapped around me. Most of the photos you see of us were, tangled up somehow. He's very close. And yeah, it was a good day. Thorfinn went to the semifinals that day. And yeah. Oh, I love this photo. So this is at Feed the Ravens, the Feed the Ravens booth. Dobroshka and Farolf. I finally remembered his SCA name. Their booth. It was the first time I ever had actually hung out with them. Maybe I'd kind of a little bit, maybe a couple of events before. This was at Great Western War in 2019. And you see Rorik and Ciela, I just now noticed she's actually there. She's leaning her head on Eric's leg. That's her husband. And then Thorfinn's former squire, Yannick, who is sitting to my right, and he's there enjoying himself. And I can't remember who's sitting in front of us and talking to us, but we were having a great time. We were just, hanging out, drinking their booze and shooting the shit. So that's like my favorite thing to do at events. Hang out with my friends and shoot the shit.
Oh, no, come back. Cool.
This one's one of my favorite things ever. This was Sinagwa Coronet 2019. Helga was queen. Actually, yeah, she was queen. No. Yeah, she was queen. She was queen. She had stepped up at Purgatorio. And so this was right around October 2019. Sinagwa Coronet, Fall Coronet falls around Halloween. So it's always this tradition that they'll do sort of costumes for their coronet. Just, come in a costume kind of a thing, like a costume, Halloween costume sort of thing. Well, Helga and I were very into the show Disenchantment at the time, and we had a running joke that I was her Lucy, who was a little demon character. And so we decided we were going to go as Princess Terabini, that's her, as queen. She had to, of course, had to do this. And then I was going to go as Lucy, the little demon, and I made it 14th century because why not, So I did a 14th century hood, kind of exaggerated the proportions, and then stuck Lucy's eyeball on it. So a lot of times you see Lucy in sort of in profile, which is one big eye. It's matte graining, so it's always that weird little profile look. And this was a photo that a dear friend, Viscountess Esmeralda of the Lakes, snapped of me and Thorfinn smooching. It looks like I'm devouring his face.
Awesome.
Okay, yeah, this is Helga stepping down as queen after 3 months after that photo. 12th night in 2020. This was the last in-person event that we were all at before COVID shut down. Yeah, I was Helga's head of court. I took over for Vera, who had the audacity to go and become royal princess. What was she thinking? But so this was Helga. She's presenting me with a gift from the crown for my service as her head of court, and it's a German eating set, a knife, a pricker, and a fork, I think, made by, great, now I'm gonna blank on his name. Okay, I'll think of it in a second. It's like right on the tip of my tongue. Everybody knows this guy. Norham, Stephen of Norham. And he makes these beautiful, metalwork knives and forks and fun stuff. And I always wanted a set. And so Helga knew that and surprised me with it in court. So yeah. This is me at a Tarn Mists event. And Tarn Mist, sorry, it's not like the Mists, it's not plural. It's a barony down in San Luis Obispo. It's our furthest flung barony down. Basically, it's sort of Caid, but not. Oftentimes it's easier for them to get to Caidan events than it is to get to Western events. But we went down to support great, now I'm forgetting the name of it. It was an event that was basically about like training for war, like different war scenarios. And my friend Francisco had brought his rock carving setup, or his little pneumatic thingy that you see me holding, and I'm practicing engraving on a piece of agate. You can also see I am the Fleur Crepeau. So, and if you've been watching anything in the last year, you're probably familiar with the Crepeau tournament that Helga, Hansa, and Hevek have been keeping alive as they're all quarantined together. But the Fleur is the kind of the inspiration. So the person who wins Crepeau in the tournament gets to award the Fleur to somebody they find inspiring. And I had just been awarded this by Viscount Geoffrey Scott in January. So this was late January of 2020. I guess I wasn't quite right. 12th Night was not the last event I went to. It was this one. So this was probably like the 25th or so. And, true story, Thorfinn and I had both been desperately ill about 2 or 3 weeks beforehand. And we're pretty sure we had COVID. And this is right when we felt good enough to go back into, humanity again. And of course, all of that happened. So yeah, there's Thorfinn and I. This is during Invocation, and that's that March Crown with the picture of me and Ciela. So he's usually like the first one or two guys. It depends if Hevek is entering, because Hevek outranks Thorfinn in the OP. So they usually go by OP with the introductions during Invocation, and so we were. I think we were second, because I think Hevek had shown up, because Hevek ultimately won this tournament. And he's just introducing me to everybody and saying what a great person I am and how much he loves me and wonderful things. So that's why my face looks really dopey right there. Like,
and he's carrying a banner. And I think one of the traditions I really love about West Kingdom Crown is that you have a banner holder that's in the middle of the field. And as you enter the list, you put your banner in the holder. And as you are eliminated from the list, you remove it. And so you can kind of watch the banners go.
Right. It's kind of not as like straightforward as the board, that a lot of kingdoms will use at the shield, and the people who are in the tourney, they have their shields on the board, and so that it moves around as people are eliminated in advance. But the banner thing is really cool. It's like this giant umbrella stand that sits in the middle of the tourney field. My West is showing again. And there's this tall, the biggest banner, it's probably 20 feet high, is the Western banner. And the Western banner is 20, 30 feet long. It's massive. This thing is massive. And it's got all of the kingdoms and the principalities, and actually I have a photo of it on my thing. I'm trying to look and see. It might even have baronies in it too, but it's all of the children essentially of the West. And everybody else puts their banners in the umbrella stand, the giant umbrella stand. And like you say, as people are eliminated, the banners get taken out one by one until you're left with the final two and then the one. And it's kind of fun. It looks like a nice bouquet of flowery pennants and pageantry.
Super awesome.
This is probably my earliest SCA photo. This is me. I'm sitting there looking pensive. My friend Stephanie is lying on the floor. This was probably, I was 16. I had to have been 16 in this photo because my mother got me that pavilion for my 16th birthday instead of a car. So
Wow.
she asked me if I wanted a car or a pavilion, and I said, duh, a pavilion. And that pavilion's still being used to this day. It is 30, I guess 28 years old, 29 years old now. I don't know how old I am.
Wow.
Whatever, do the math. Not me. But yeah, it's still going. And let me say, it's Four Seasons Tentsmiths, and I think they're still around. They were a couple of years ago, but man, they made stuff that lasted.
That's
Good
amazing.
investment. This is me the day I won Barda Sonagua. And this is actually a good example of how fringy we really were. Like, we just, the pavilion in the background, again, I got that for my 16th birthday, ignore it. We were very, pup tents and campy, mundane camping gear. We have my friend Isaac, who is rocking a just egregiously loud kilt, because again, they were only interested in wearing kilts at this time. We have my friend Matt, who was one of the very first people that I can recall anyway, that brought taiko drumming to the SCA, or at least to our area. And we used to get yelled at so hard for playing the taiko drums because those things are loud.
They're loud.
We get so pissed. And who cares? We were off having our own fun. We also had a guy who played bagpipes. So, so between the taiko drumming and the bagpipes, and then the rest of us just running amok with boffer weapons being ridiculous, I mean, I'm sure that we struck a lot of nerves. But yeah, I had actually won the Barda Sonagua contest, and I was very proud of myself, as you can see by my stance.
So cute.
Yeah. Okay, this was at a West Ontario War, or an Ontario West War, depending on what it was at the time. This was the vigil for Mistress Eulalia. Yeah, she was getting elevated that weekend. And so we had Giles and Giuseppe up from Caid. I think they may have even been barons at the time of Gildenholt. And then there's Seamus, who I love to death. We have a torrid flirtationship. And there's my good friends, Lena and Kathan, and they've moved to Ontier, so they're your guys' neck of the woods now. Yep. And of course we have Viscount Ajax rocking the early period. And we were just all very having a great time. We got very drunk. We had a good time though. It was a lot of fun.
Those are some good styles.
Yeah. Oh gosh, this was my first Venetian gown I ever made. This was probably in 2005, I think, maybe 2006. And I was just starting to figure out Venetian costumes, 16th century Venetian, and doing the courtesan thing. And this fabric was the first fabric I ever bought that was just like flat out looks. It was so luxurious. I got it at a screaming bargain for $25 a yard. It was knocked down from something like $150 a yard.
Holy cow.
100% silk. I still have that dress. I picked it apart. I intend to remake it with the remnants that I've had for these many years. I just haven't gotten around to it, but I felt gorgeous in that dress. So
you look gorgeous in that dress.
So now we're getting into the stuff that Tulia does that isn't the SCA. This was my first 18th century dress, and it started with a bunch of friends from Coston College, and we decided we were going to start a kind of an 18th century SCA. We called it the Société de Lumières, because we're French, don't you know? It's very classy. We were all French aristocrats right before the French Revolution, being ridiculous. And this was taken at a cemetery that's in just outside Oakland on the border of Piedmont. It's called Mountain View Cemetery, and it's just an amazing cemetery. It's very, very old and very, very, like a lot of very, very rich people over the centuries in California have been buried there. And so it's very just very picturesque. And
I lived 4 blocks away from that cemetery for quite a while. Before I knew what the SCA was.
Yeah, and that cemetery is gorgeous.
It is. I used to walk through there all the time.
Yeah, and the way it's all it's kind of terraced up the side of a mountain. And so you get all these different views and vistas that just sort of like wind down, and they have like a creek that runs through the thing and fountains everywhere. It's just very, very poshy.
When
But
the Oakland Hills fire burned, it burned up to the edge of this.
oh, yeah, it didn't actually burn it. That was, yeah. But they don't really care what we do in the cemetery. They're very permissive about what goes on there. And so we had a number of these 18th century events. This was just the first one. And we were out there picnicking and drinking champagne and getting like ridiculously drunk in a cemetery. And never once did they even care. You know, people be walking their dogs through it and be like, "What are you guys doing?" We're like, "We're being fabulous." And they're all, "Rock on." Like, you gotta love like the Bay Area where like nothing phases people.
They have a huge feral cat colony too.
Yeah. Oh, they do. Yeah. I've never seen the cats. Oh my God. I love kitties. Yeah.
Anyway, I love that place. It's awesome.
This is another 18th century gown. This is my first 18th century gown I ever made. That was my second one, the previous one. This one was entirely hand sewn. So it was also the first thing I ever sewed entirely by hand. I took a 2-day seminar with the Janaea Whitaker, who is I don't know if she's retired now, but she ran basically the costume program at Colonial Williamsburg. She spearheaded the entire internship. There's like an internship that you can do now with the millinery. It's called the millinery shop, but it's basically you learn how to make these gowns by hand and then do other types of costuming accoutrement. And I took a class from her, and this is the dress that I made. It's an 18th century, 1760s robe à la française.
I just love the color. It's so beautiful.
It's this gorgeous kind of magenta and blue shot taffeta. I still have it, and every now and then I remake it a little bit. I don't currently fit into it. Can put a little COVID weight on, but yeah, it gets retrimmed every so often, which is very period. That's what they did in the 18th century. This gown is my Eleanor Benlow's gown. It was based on a portrait I fell in love with from about 1560. English gown, high-necked English gown. It was the first time I ever tried doing something like this. I would remake it in a heartbeat if I had like it just smacks of effort. So I keep thinking like, oh, I'll do this. And then I just look at it and I go, I got so many other things I want to do. But this was my first attempt at it. And 2007, I think. This was also my first big event back to the SCA. Well, second or third, actually, big event. It was a 12th night in 2007. And I was working out my research on the French hoods at this point. So I got very, very deep into French hoods. This was same event. That was my friend Katie. I made her, she wanted to look like Anne Boleyn. So I made her an Anne Boleyn gown, and she just looks stunning. And honestly, I kind of hacked that thing together at the last minute, and it just came out perfect. So it looked so beautiful in it.
At this point, are you apprenticed to somebody?
Nope. I very quickly kind of get snapped up after this by Juana Isabella de Montoya y Ramirez. She made us learn how to say her name before, she basically apprenticed us. So we had to practice that. This is kind of that same era, 2007-ish, and that is a robe l'anglaise with what's called an en furrow back. It's pleated. It's whereas the Française gown has a loose back. It's that kind of, we call it a sack back gown with like a kind of cape looking thing that comes out of the back of the gown. This one has that similar sort of pleating arrangement, but it's all sewn down. And so that's just a detail of the stitching on that. I never finished that gown. I still have it, and I pull out the pieces. This silk was amazing. It's this blue and white shot silk taffeta that I got at Discount Fabrics in Berkeley for maybe $15 a yard, which was a bit splurgy for me at the time, but also could not let that color go.
Worth it. Totally worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. This is my first really like hardcore Elizabethan. Like I was gonna go historically accurate AF. And the French hood, you can see this is a better French hood than the previous one. because I had worked out a lot of issues with my research on how it went together. And this was an eggplant colored wool flannel that I bought in London, or no, I think it was in London. I had an internship in London in 2005, and I couldn't sew for 3 months, and I came back to the States, and I just was like, I'm making everything. And so I cranked that out, and I wore it to kind of my first event back after being gone again, another little kind of fits and spurts hiatus, and I felt like a bajillion dollars in it. It's actually a very nice gown, and I still take it out and look at it. Same era, very similar time period, and it's also another 1560s sort of upper class, not nobility. It's out of brown wool flannel, and the jacket, the doublet, is all pinked, slashed to show the red silk lining underneath it, and as are the sleeves of the doublet. So,
I love that your facial expression changes to fit the period. I mean, I know these are probably like photo shoots, and so
Yeah,
you're doing that consciously, but it really makes a difference.
Yeah, it is sort of interesting. I was actually intentionally posing, and what's interesting about that, though, that photo made such an impression on a friend of mine that I knew many, many years ago, that when she was going through art school, she actually painted a giant oil painting portrait of that. And I have it, and I'm like, I don't have a space big enough to hang it up. But she's like, hey, do you want this? And I'm like, this was like 15 years later. She's like, oh, by the way, I painted this thing in college. Do you want this? And I'm like, heck yeah, that's cool. Somebody painted a picture of me. Same era, same photo shoot as the previous. This is me showing the undergarments. That's my second. This is actually the second iteration of Elizabethan stays or bodies, mid 16th century. We don't have extant, anything that's extant prior to like 1590, but we have, and that's the front. We have a lot of kind of extrapolation that we can, think that they had to have had something. It may have looked like this, but we don't have any hard evidence. So this was based on a kind of a combination between the Dorothea Sabina stays, which date to 1590, and then the Queen Elizabeth I Westminster Abbey effigy. This calls the effigy stays that date to about 1604, I think. So yeah, there's a lot of guesswork, even in late period. I love this dress. Oh my God, I love this dress. I felt like such a rock star. This was probably like 2008, 9. And this is at what event was that? Probably at an investiture, Miss Investiture. It was, I think, right before I'd moved down to San Jose. So, but it was down in the mists. And I just loved how I looked in this dress. It's a simple black flannel gown. Again, 1560s, which was kind of my sweet spot. And I have a hat that was a very early hat made by Truly Carmichael, and I ended up gifting it to another friend, so I don't have it anymore, but I enjoyed it. And so now somebody else gets to enjoy it.
I love the pink cuffs on the.
Yeah, it was turned, I made the cuffs too long, so I always make sleeves too long because I never really know how they're going to fit. But I'd slit them up the side, and I realized if I turned them back, they looked like, they were cuffs. And I was like, I lined it in this pink silk taffeta, and it looked really cool. So I was like, I'm just going to keep that. We're going to go with that. And then the fronts of the skirt, it doesn't show, but the fronts of the skirt, if they flapped back, you would see that they were also lined in silk taffeta, pink silk taffeta.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, there I am. I was actually mocking a friend of mine who always had these like ridiculous poses where she was like, and so another friend like snapped a picture as I was like, and it turned out really good. I was like, oh, hey, that makes sense now. I see why she does that. Like, I thought it looked exaggerated, but it looks really
cool.
Yeah. And this was very shortly after that, actually. This was another gown, 1590s, which I had never tried before. I thought it was ridiculous. It was, in fact, ridiculous, but it was a learning experience, construction-wise and wearing-wise. Yeah, so I still couldn't really get the standing ruff right. It was the only time I've ever tried to do it, and it's not really my era, so I've never really gone back to it, but it was an interesting digression.
I think I haven't. Yeah,
And the back, yeah, yep. That's me and my pattern matching too. I get very obsessive about pattern matching.
I might have noticed that.
Oh yeah. Oh, this is me taking one of my apprentices. This was at a Sinagua coronet or Sinagua investiture, 2014, something like that. And I made her French hood, and yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, that was actually the outfit I was laureled in too. It's one of the only other times I wore it.
How many apprentices do you have?
I have, well, one currently. She's sort of got fostered off to me when her Laurel, who she's still tied to in a lot of ways, went off and became like this fabulous historical lesbian author. Is having this whole like life now. That's Tangwistle, Mistress Tangwistle, who I love to pieces. And they both came to me at a party. We were hanging out at a party. And I should say my apprentice currently is Maestrina. I think I'm going to mess it up. Maestrina Asa. And this was before she became a pelican, and she and Tangwistle came to me at a party, and we were all pretty tipsy. And they were both like, we really would like you to take over Asa and foster her, what, because like I said, Tangwistle was off doing fabulous author stuff. And yeah, and so I was happy to. And then like literally the next week, they offered her a pelican. I was like, do you still want to be my apprentice? And she's like, yes, I do. And so, I asked her 3 times, and she refused 3 times to break the fealty. And so, yes, she's still my apprentice. So that's why I hesitate when somebody asks if I have an apprentice, because it's complicated. But I love her to pieces, and she's fantastic. So, so yeah, this one is this was the West Kingdom town fair. This was this really cool event that was spearheaded by Countess Elishka, and to kind of center the arts in a non-fighting environment. And it turned into this amazing experience. And so you're standing in front of the chapel. My friend Muriel, who it was part of her Laurel. Actually, she ended up getting Laurel for was that she made this traveling chapel for a 15th century French noblewoman. So when she was like traveling between her castles, basically, she would have this traveling chapel that would go with her. But the inside is set up all of the early SCA history. And so we have like the original, I think the original thrones. That's what you see in the back there. Yeah, that's a part of the original thrones, I think. There's a couple of tapestries. But anyways, then this is just a group of us being, fruit sellers or vegetable sellers at a market. So
it's so cute. I love
it. Yeah. Okay, this is the fun tradition. This was the first time Thorfinn fought for me. He went to semifinals and then was eliminated. So he's part of the Fellowship of the Argent Angels, and they're kind of this like legendary group in the West of just these very tight-knit group of guys who are sort of part war unit, part like insane brotherhood. It's really hard to explain, but their little tradition is that one of them dies on the field. They all come out and they carry him off the field. And so Thorfinn is lying in state because he has just been carried off the field as he was defeated. And I am pretending to cry. Yeah, okay, so this was a really cool thing that we got to do for a number of years. I'm standing in the gallery in the center in blue. The fellow with the cup is Uther, our current king, and then Ciela is standing next to him. This was a jousting event. It was a private event that was held in Turlock at a private Renaissance fair, basically. It was this couple that had created this sort of miniature Ren fair on their property. And they were very big in the jousting scene. So we fell into it through Uther and his wife Kara, who had met them, and they asked Uther and Kara to be the king and queen of Revel. And then we got brought in as as their entourage, as their retinue. And so I was a lady in waiting here, and we're watching I think we're watching the jousters have just finished, and they're kind of giving a little awards out to each of them for like most ridiculous death and stuff like that. It was a really, really, really cool experience, and I feel very privileged that I got to be included in it. We did it for about 5 years, I think.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
a neat place. Oh yeah, this is this was March Crown 2016, and that's Duke Alfar holding me up on one side, and the guy who ends up winning this one, Duke Hansa, he was holding me up on the other side, and it was just a phenomenal day. Like probably one of the best days I ever had in the SCA, and we finaled. Thorfinn and Hansa were in the finals, and Hansa was just on fire that day. Like he had just, it was like the most unambiguously clean, just beautiful, like this guy, it's his tournament, and we're all just here. Like, and it was actually really cool to watch. And yeah, so I got to be as Thorfinn's consort. We both were named the Commendabilis, which is we jokingly call it the best loser award, which believe me, we're not saying that to be mean or anything like that, but it's given to recognize the runners up in the finals. And that's really cool. It's a really beautiful little oak leaf, that bronze oak leaf, and I wear it as a necklace sometimes. But yeah, such a good day.
For on tier, it's a silver rose and silver lily
yeah.
These socks are pretty fabulous.
You can see I'm also wearing them in the one where I'm in the Feed the Ravens tent. I have another color. Those are from Sock Dreams, sockdreams.com. And I think they're called O chevrons. It's their knee length O chevrons. So they're like the letter O chevrons, and they're knitted.
I may have to go and surf the Sock Dreams.
Oh, they were amazing. Oh, this is another photo of me and Ciela at Revel, not an SCA event, but this was the King's Pavilion. Basically, it was this massive marquee. It was red and black, so all of the colors are always weird whenever you take photos in it. And we're sitting on the Queen's throne here. we're Queen Kara's naughty ladies in waiting, just being very. We take turns in it and pretend to be her. And we made up this little story about how we were actually the Queen's sisters. And then she would catch us being naughty, and like, we'd have to like, get punished or something. And it was so much fun. It was really wonderful. Oh, this is me crying very not attractively. I was speaking this was at a West on Tier War several years ago, I guess. It's 2016, 2017. And I was there for the elevation of my former apprentices. That's now Mistress Elspeth and Mistress Sari, and they are the mother-daughter team of Renegtane. I apprenticed them not because I needed to teach them anything. They had already figured it all out, and I am not a potter, so I don't know anything about it. But they kind of came to me, and we were having these discussions, and they were sort of feeling a little stymied where they were in terms of progress towards becoming a Laurel. And I figured, you know what, screw it. I'll take them as my apprentices, and I'll advocate for them because they know their stuff. I can see that,
Yeah.
And they didn't really need that much help. It was just a little bit of a push, and boop. Yay, that's me and Mistress Thea, and we're hanging out in another West on Tier War, actually probably that same weekend, I think. And we're drinking. You can see our, like, I forget what they were calling them. They were the like frat drinking horns or something. I don't even know how it happened. It just did organically, and it was a lot of fun.
Solo cup, duct tape, and aluminum foil.
Yep. Duct tape, aluminum foil, and a red Solo cup.
It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. That's them. That's Elspeth and Sari getting elevated. And it was a really cool ceremony because they also they, at the time, and I'm not sure if they've moved now, but at the time they were living in Barony of Alicia, which is Humboldt County, basically in California. And they were playing a lot with Ontier. So Ontier was sort of their second home. And then I think they've moved now.
I think they live in Ontier now.
Yeah, I think so. I think, because I know that they were a few years ago preparing for that. But they still show up at so many Western events. So it's like,
Hard to know what's happening.
And it was wonderful to just get to be a part of it, just for, but I honestly, I feel very weird about taking credit for them, because they were their own, and they were already there, and they didn't really need anything other than just that little bit of a push. And so, yeah, they did it all in their own steam.
And when you mentor somebody, it's all their work that gets them there.
That is true. It is true. But I don't know. I just feel so like they were so already there, and they'd been there for so long that like me even trying to claim any sort of stake in that just feels a little like trying to boost my own glory, and that's not what I'm about. But I'm very, very happy to have them and be part of my friend group, part of my family, So this is actually at a Renaissance fair. I was very briefly involved with the Venetian Courtesan Guild at some of the smaller fairs in Northern California. And I love this dress. I wish that there was another photo of it that showed it full length, but I look really good in yellow. So
beautiful.
It's yellow silk damask, and it's just stunning. But it's at the very end of the day. We're all exhausted. We've drank way too much Lambrusco, and we're just sort of at this point rolling around in this giant puddle of silks and ridiculousness. Yeah. Another West Ontier, and I think that was that same weekend. I think for some reason, these are all from the same weekend. Oh, no, this was actually from the next year. This was 2017. I know because I'm sewing on Thorfinn's ex-wife's bridal dress. We were all very, very close. I was in their wedding. It was an amazing wedding, by the way, at War, and I was putting the finishing touches on her gown, on Uraka's gown, and it was a Viking dress. It was actually kind of Slavic. It was more just like a Slavic tunic, and I was embroidering a little bind rune on the center back, like right where the small of her back was. I put this little bind rune there.
Very cool.
It didn't work, But you know what? Everybody's happy now, so it all worked out in the end.
All that matters.
Yeah. They went on to their own little happiness, and that's all that matters. So this is me following year, I think, at a 12th night, and I'm wearing my one and only German gown I ever made, because I think it was actually Helga and Hans's first reign, and they were stepping down doing Germans, and I was like, I'll be on the team. I'll team player. And so I made this ridiculous gown, and actually the fabric has these laurel leaves all over it, so it's kind of obnoxious. But it's a really nice gown, and it fit really well. Like I just kind of pulled it out of my butt at the last minute. It's one of those things that
why they just go together perfectly.
Yeah. Okay, this is mostly what happens when you bring Tulia to court. That's Ciela and Ula, and I don't know what we're doing. I think we're probably trying to take selfies, and we're just being generally poor examples of peers. Giggling and laughing. I had been in a really bad car accident, actually, like about a week before this. And I was sort of like high on, not on medication or anything, because I walked away unscathed, but I was sort of high on like, I'm invincible, I rolled my car at 70 miles an hour and walked away with like no scratches or anything.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. There was a vacuum cleaner that somebody lost off the back of their truck, and I swerved to avoid it and then hit a concrete wall. Yeah, about like 70-ish miles an hour. It was a pretty high speed. Shot across 4 lanes of traffic, hit the wall, flipped my car, and did not even whiplash, like nothing.
Wow, what kind of car was that?
2007 Toyota Matrix. I love that car. That was heartbreaking.
Wow, that's amazing.
Oh, this is another one of my 18th century gowns. This was the last one I made. 2018. And I was in Paris. I went to the ball at Versailles. I got to do this twice, but every year for the last like 4 or 5 years, they've had a 18th century ball at the Palace of Versailles, and you get to wander around in 18th century costume with your champagne and feel very fabulous. And so this is taken actually at the flat that we were staying in Paris after the ball, because we'd gotten a bunch of photos and they were very kind of too dark really, but I wanted to document the dress. And so
Just stunning.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful gown. Even I look at it and go, oh, I did that. Oh, look, there's me, I'm queen. So this is me at the Dickens Fair, the Charles Dickens Fair, Great Christmas Dickens Fair or something. Anyway, it's an institution in the Bay Area, Northern California, around Christmas time every year at the Cow Palace, the glamorously named Cow Palace. They transform one of the outbuildings into the streets of London in Christmas Eve, roughly like 1850. So it's Dickens characters and then some historical characters. And one year I was very lucky and privileged to be the Queen Victoria understudy. And so this is me on one of the days that I went out as Queen Victoria. And you see the girl standing next to me is the actual Queen Victoria. It was her day off, and she was actually wandering around with me, just like kind of giving me instructions, like, just do this now. And I'm like, thank you. And then there, of course, is Viscountess Ciela, ever at my side. She also does Dickens Fair, or did Dickens Fair. We both left Dickens. There was a lot of not good stuff going on, so we both went bye. And yeah, but that was a really cool experience. My favorite gown ever, the favorite thing I've ever made is this. So this was in 2015, 2014, something like that. I know it was Thorfinn stepping down, one of his reigns, he was stepping down, and I was their head of court, and I made this gown for that because they were kind of doing a late period thing. And it's Florentine, 16th century Florentine. It's made from this fabric that I've been hoarding for probably 10, 11, 12 years. I bought it when I was doing my internship in London. A friend of mine took me to a offcuts shop, it was a upholstery type shop that was selling like seconds and offcuts of really high-end upholstery. And this particular fabric is a silk and cotton blend, and it shows up in a lot of BBC costume and period costume productions, because I think they made it in like a million different colorways. But I happen to find black on black, which is really hard to find in damask these days. Even 15 years ago, it was hard to find. And so I hoarded that for years until it told me what it wanted to be, and wanted to be this gown. And I love this gown so much, and I can't wait to lose enough weight to fit back into it. Just a little too small. Yeah. I love this photo. This is another West Ontario War. I think this was actually at Eulalia's elevation. She got elevated at the Grand Court at that war. And I wanted to do a kind of 13th century, like sort of 13th, maybe early 14th century outfit. And so I had this undergown that's a very lightweight, pale yellow linen that's practically transparent, so it was comfortable to wear in the heat. And then over that is a surcoat of green damask, pale green damask, and my whole wimple and veil arrangement, which I feel so sexy in. Like, I really feel glamorous in a wimple in a way that I just don't anywhere else in any other situation.
It's super weird, but headgear it is kind of amazing that way.
It's really flatter on me. I know, and I know there's women that insist that they don't look good in a wimple, and I get that. And you know what? Rock what you feel beautiful in, but but I feel stunning in that. Oh yeah, that was that March crown that Hansa won and Thorfinn finaled in. I am holding branches of laurels Yeah, for the exactly for the victor's wreaths. And Ciela makes the wreaths. She makes them beautifully. And another friend had brought all of the branches of laurels so we could make the wreaths for the heirs. And that's me just holding it and being like, I got a laurel. Weird. Yeah. But also just happy. Oh gosh, this is 2007-ish, 2008. And this was my one foray into Elizabethan jackets. I have a very good friend, Mistress Isabel she's from Atlantia, and I'm actually clutching this because this is her a pin that she designed with another friend of mine, Morgan, Mistress Morgan, that is the attack laurel. So it's barbed wire. It's a laurel wreath of barbed wire.
Nice.
But Isabel got me very excited about these jackets because that's what she was making a lot at the time. She was doing all this research on it. And so I decided to try it. And it's a fantastic jacket, looks great with jeans. So yeah, and that's a linen kirtle. It's the black kirtle I'm wearing is this kind of heavy linen twill. It was really cool fabric, and I probably got it somewhere online. I used to be the queen of finding really awesome fabric online, but now like I don't even know what happened. I just suddenly can't anymore. Oh yeah, this is my laurel, Duchess Juana. This is her kind of fealty tree. It encompasses her, I believe it also encompasses her pelican or proteges as well, but it's her former apprentices, current apprentices, and I think proteges and former proteges. And you can see my device is, if you go up from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, and then straight up, it's the blue cross with the gold cross flurry. That's my device. Yeah. Yep. She's got quite the bush.
And I'm gonna let's leave that there.
Oh, she's proud of her bush.
Wow, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you name all of them?
Let me see. I can name. You put me on the spot. Well, I see my apprentice sister Attain, Duchess Attain. She's down on the left-hand side, 3 over. No, oh, sorry, that's actually Ciela's, Dirk. That's the two. It's the red and the black with the two moons facing opposite each other. Down 1 from there.
There.
That one, yeah, that's Ciela's. I'm sorry, that made me. For some reason, I thought that was.
It says these are just apprentices and grands and great grands.
Okay.
That's remarkable. That's super cool.
She did this for well, she has added to it and then taken away from it as well over the years. And I think this was actually at that what's it called? The town fair. That was part of the display, I think, in the chapel.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I just thought I love this.
Yeah. It is really cool. And it's a really neat way of displaying it. Oh, there's me and Ciela cuddling again. Like I said, there's a lot of photos of us cuddling. That was at that March Crown in 2019, I think. And I was exhausted. Like, consorting is not something that I'm really, it gives me a lot of anxiety. And so Ciela's always kind of there just to be like, hey, take a breather and de-stress a little. And it's really good like that.
That is the end of
Yay.
I thought I would end with that snuggly picture.
Yeah.
So that thing was on the sorry. The amazing lineage tree was on display at Golden Belt.
Yeah.
So that's
we're on there all together. All of us crazy people. We're a pretty good crew, actually. All of Juana's lineage encompasses some just stellar human beings. And I'm not even saying that facetiously. Like, everybody's just really interesting and fun, and I got some cool siblings. So I got a family out of it, which is pretty cool.
That is super cool.
Yeah.
Unclench your arms.
Yeah, that's right, Ciela. We got this huge fight one time. One of the first events, actually, that I think that event where you see the photo of me and Alfar and Hansa, they're holding me. Like I was, as we're getting further and further into the lists and it's getting closer and closer to finals, I am starting to stress and I'm doing this, making like I'm,
Oh,
you know, I didn't even really realize that I look mad or anything. But Ciela wanders up and she's like, uncross your arms. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, uncross your arms. I'm like, my arms aren't crossed. And she's like, look down. And I went, and she's like, now smile. And I'm like, I'm smiling. She's like, good. And she just walks away. She's like, everybody's watching you, so you better smile. And I'm like, this isn't helping me, but thank you. It's helping me. Finals are a whole thing.
it's a little crazy.
Mhm.
Is consorting when you started to be a consort, was it surprising to you?
Oh God, yeah. So I came into it really, really late in kind of my development. Like, you know, most people I know in my age group that have been in as long as I have had, you know, I'm going to just talk about girlfriends of mine that I've had over the years have said that, you know, they would have their boyfriends would fight and we would sit around and, you know, go to tourneys and it would be this very kind of like easygoing thing where like they weren't expected to advance very far, but they were going to go out and have fun and, you know, learn stuff in the process. And so that was not my experience. My experience was about 23 years of I do what I want, you know, like I don't even pay attention to finals. I don't even pay attention to tournaments. Like I just go off and I do whatever the heck I feel like doing. And then in 2015, Thorfinn, we were just friends. I always have to say this because people are always like, oh, which was number one issue I realized about consorting for a highly visible person is they immediately want to just say like, so how long you guys been fucking? Like, not at all, you know. But Thorfinn asked if I wanted to be his consort, and I said, sure, why not? You know, we were buddies. I thought it'd be fun. And then the first tournament, he went to semifinals, and I started to realize like, oh, and then people would come up to me and say things like, oh, so you're ready to be queen? Like we were just, you know, hanging out, or they would try to come up to me in before the event, you know, like weeks before the event and try to be like, so you guys entering? So do you think, you know, you think Thorfinn's going to go all the way? Are you ready to be queen? And I'm like, what the actual?
Yeah, it's not helpful.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun. And then and it just sort of robbed a lot of the joy of it because, you know, it is a really high pressure environment. And so thankfully I have someone like Ciela who has done it. You know, she's been princess and she's been to the finals before and gone through all of that emotional, like just upheaval of that entire experience. And she kind of immediately was just like, no, this is how you do it. Like, this is what gets you through it. This is how you get through it. Just breathe. Just remember, like, you know, if you need me, I'm here. And so yeah, that was a really huge learning lesson for me that came very late in my SCA game, and I still struggle with it. I do. I get a lot of anxiety about finals and just tournament fighting in general. Something I love watching, and I feel like I just get so wrapped up in the anxiety of it going on and meaning something that I can't enjoy it. So yeah,
I
it's
yeah.
a whole thing. I'm a hot mess up here. It's
I get the same way. It's incredibly nerve-wracking, and some of the shenanigans that other consorts perform ahead of time
Mhm.
are really horrible.
Mhm.
People can be really cruel, like basically trying to sabotage you.
Yeah. And I think
And
sometimes it's unintentional, but a lot, and it's just sort of those, I guess, microaggressions, you know, like really, they don't maybe realize, or maybe they do, but they also are still trying to play it off as if it's funny. But some of the stuff that gets said to consorts, especially high profile consorts or consorts of high profile fighters, is just crappy. Like it's not nice. None of it's nice. And one minute you're just like kind of there enjoying yourself. The next minute you're the center of everybody's attention and not in a good way.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard. And there's a flip side to that too, in that there's also a huge swath of people that are super supportive and excited and,
Oh,
say things like, "Oh, I can't wait to see you rain," and
yeah.
that's really
And
awesome.
that's the thing for me though, is it's weird. I don't like being told that people can't wait to see me rain because to me, I start to get really emotionally invested in the idea. Like, oh,
Yeah,
that's right, it'll be really cool if I could. That would be super fun. And then if it doesn't happen, that's like the biggest letdown ever, where you and that's for me is the real hard part, is not getting emotionally invested in anything, because you never know. You never know.
yeah,
And Thorfinn, as good as he is, he's beatable. And everybody is, honestly, everybody is, even Uther. Everybody's beatable at some level, and somebody could just have a very, very, very good day. And and you gotta just accept it and let it go. And I'm sure Ciela is laughing her ass off at me right now, because she knows the entire time I'm just internally screaming.
yeah.
But
And it's hard not to be internally screaming, because
no, well, I'm glad to hear that, because nobody really talks about that stuff.
yeah,
That.
yeah, and some people, like, just like some fighters.
Mhm.
Watching a lot of my sister's Murder of Dukes interviews,
Mhm.
a lot of them talk about how they have their thing and other people know that they are not to be
Mhm.
disturbed and they need to have their process, and consorts are the same.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's like, for me, it's really hard to be surrounded by a whole bunch of people.
yeah, exactly. I also feel the same way. I don't like that claustrophobia that starts to set in, especially, and I hate how this sounds, but when you get to finals, or you're getting close to finals, and people are suddenly, you're acquiring people you've never seen before in your life, and they're just like right there, like, hey friend, and you're all, who the hell are you? And
And
you
they just want to be a part of all the amazingness, right?
yeah, and it's that feeling of suddenly, like, the walls closing in on you, and you're suddenly just sort of trapped in this amoeba of people that just want to be a part of it, that want to be there when the big thing happens.
Yeah.
And that's fine, that's great. It's just when it happens, and I'm short, and so I have like it doesn't take a lot for people to feel like they're really closing in on me, and I'm getting so that was a big, like, weird awakening. But one of the things Ciela is very good at, she's very good at just basically like, hey, this is my Tulia.
Uh-huh.
Like scooping me up and like kind of just creating space around.
Yep.
So, and I guess that would be honestly something I would recommend to anybody, and they find themselves in that situation, any consort that finds themselves in that situation, is have somebody right there that can sort of be the interference, that can sort of, you know, just keep that space bubble around you, if that's what you need.
If that's
You may not even know you need it until it happens, like I did.
or a hand to hold and, like, just mangle while all of this is serene and composed and totally on top of it.
That's one of the things that just really kills me about one of the aspects of our culture, which is that the consort, and we're gonna just be flat out and say that the gendered consort is usually female, and she is expected to be this queen of love and beauty and serenity, and like nothing phases her, and everybody just thinks that she's just sweetness and light, and I am not that person. All like, I sit there and I'm just like, hi. Just yeah, it's hard. It's not in my nature to just be chill. Like, I'm not a chill person.
And
So,
I've seen consorts
yeah.
run off
Oh
and
yeah.
go and throw it behind their tent, clean up, pull it together, and come back and be that.
I had a panic attack the first time that Kelly went to, or Thorfinn went to semifinals, and I standing in front of the thrones and everything, and I'm waiting for the semifinals to set up, basically, so they can start doing the fighting thing. And I see somebody out of the corner of my eye bringing out these boxes, and they set them down like next to kind of where I'm standing, and they open them, and I look down, and it's the heirs coronets, and I'm just suddenly went.
It became real.
I grabbed my friend, and I'm like, I need a moment. And we ran around back, and I just had this like little bit of like a panic, and I, got my shit together and came back out and stood there, and, Thorfinn did not advance, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I didn't have such a huge emotional stake at that time, but yeah, it was this really weird moment of what. And then the second time that happened wasn't quite as dramatic, but it was the time that he did go to finals. And I had this venerable duchess that runs the lists, has always run the lists. She comes straight up to me and she's like, what's your device? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, your arms, what are your arms? And I'm like, like just complete dial tone, I wasn't expecting anybody to like ask me that. And she goes, oh, I'll look it up, and just like walks off. And I'm like, Azure, a cross flurry or between 4 plates of hurt. Like, I couldn't in the moment like spit it out. And then it's because it finally dawned on me, oh, she wants to know this in case Kelly wins. And then we have to like, yeah, it gets announced basically. And yeah, that was a whole thing. But thankfully I have a very simple device. I can rattle that stuff off pretty easily.
Oh, I'm sitting here thinking, wow, I can't even blazon my device. I guess I should get on remembering that.
One of the things that Juana had us, all of us apprentices, we all had to learn how to blazon our own device. And I had at the time, I had a more complicated device. I changed it after I was Laurel to something that was way simpler. And I did memorize the old one. I couldn't possibly tell you what it is now, but the new one is very easy to remember. So.
That is getting added to my list of things that really should be.
You should know how to sign your name, and you should know how to blazon your device, and you should be able to at least learn a simple dance, like just something easy. Like if you find, and this is, I guess I'm going with like rules for like consorts or rules for people who intend to reign someday, is like, know your blazon, sign your name. And if dancing breaks out around you, be a good sport and join in, and also just laugh it off if you suck at it like I do. Just laugh. But it's good to know at least one dance. Black nag, I'm really good at black nag.
Okay, so it's apparently a secret time.
Okay.
I've never done SCA dancing.
Oh no.
My husband loves to do it. I've never done it.
Really? Wow. I had no choice in the matter. My former parts danced Laurel basically. So I had really I couldn't avoid it, and I had to learn how to like it. And I don't care for the dancing. I really don't. It's not my geek. I'm really happy I'm really excited by other people who are excited about it. So, but I got to know so much of the dance community during the course of our 10-year relationship that they're all my friends. And so if I am ever nearby, especially another good example is my apprentice Asa, who is an incredible dancer. And just very, very enthusiastic about it. So if she knows I'm like, even catches a glimpse of me and dancing has happened, she's over there and she's grabbing me and she's dragging me into it. So, so I've learned to be a good sport about it. Well, it's not my thing. It's not my geek. It can be a lot of fun. And the less you care about how you look, the more fun you will have. It's a lot of fun, and it can be a lot of ridiculousness too. So.
But it is a really good idea to like get those first 2 or 3 dances out of the way so that you're not doing it in front of a court.
Yeah. Honestly, like, and I've learned this too, a really good dances that are really easy are kind of the some of the Italian dances, which are very slow, and it's just stepping. It's literally stepping, and then you kind of dip here, or you do a little like you walk backwards, and then you walk forwards, and then you do backwards, and then
like
you walk
electric slide.
Yeah, exactly, kind of, yeah, but it's slow, and so even if you're not familiar with how it works, if you're dancing with somebody, usually a dance community is very good about partnering up with people who are not familiar with dancing and guiding them through it. At least in the West, it's not like they're going to throw you in the deep end and make you do like a volta or something, which is a very complicated dance. they will walk you through it and coach you through it as you do it. And also they, at least the way it's done here in the West Kingdom, you run through it with the steps called once, and then you do it, the actual dance. So they do kind of like a slow, here's how the steps go, calling out all the steps, and then then they do the full thing. And yeah, it can be intimidating, especially dancing in general. People have such baggage about, but it can be a ton of fun. Give it a shot.
I was a club girl in my earlier years, so
Yeah,
I think it can handle. So I just wrote myself a note that I have to memorize my blazon, and that I need to get in touch with Duchess Arna, who is kind of revitalizing dance in Ontario, and
oh, that's awesome.
And do some dancing.
Do it. Yeah, dancing it can be fun. Again, like I said, not my favorite thing in the world, but I'll happily do it, especially if Asa drags me into it and I can't say no to her. Just I can't. It's like, but so confession time. So I love archery, but I've never done archery in the SCA. So that's my confession, is every event I'm always like, I'll make it out to the archery range, and I never do. I have never managed once in 28 years.
See, and I've done archery practice. We shoot at home, but I also have never actually shot at an event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which will change when we go back in person, because one of my apprentices is really heavy into archery. So
that's awesome. Archery is so much fun. Target archery. I again have no real interest in like combat archery, but target archery is just something so satisfying about it.
Yeah. And I feel a little bit like a fraud, because I'm my persona is Scythian, and we were mounted archers, and I have a carp for persona development, but I've never really done archery at an SCA.
I challenge you.
All right, I'm adding it to the list. Okay,
well, you know what? I'll add it to my list too. We will both do archery once things get going back in 1 year. 1 year's time, if the SCA doesn't shut down again, if death take me or the world end and the SCA shuts down, we will make it to an archery range at an event. We will shoot some arrows. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Penny Wright says, one of my go-to pieces of advice for entering Crown is to familiarize yourselves with what happens during the tourney and how the finals and associated ceremonies work, just in case.
That's a really, really good piece of advice. And, she's been queen a couple of times, so she knows. Yeah.
And serve on a retinue.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, that was one of the things that I started doing way before anyone was fighting for me, but I wanted to know what it was like. And honestly, it's the best place to be during court, because you hear everything that's going on, you see everything that's going on, you're there, but you're not in the hot seat, so you can just sit back there and make like little snarky asides that the queen overhears and then cracks up and gives you dirty looks. That wasn't like my entire existence with Helga as queen or anything, but yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we are running at about exactly 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Good job.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it can never go under an hour with me. That's just
I did not expect that. No. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about tonight that we haven't talked about?
Well, not without getting into like a whole like rabbit hole of conversations, but I think we covered everything. I feel really, really good. I feel really good about our conversation tonight.
Good.
I did. I had a great time, and you brought back some really fun memories and stuff that I actually hadn't really thought about or contextualized in, even with all of the rambling and talking I've done on Between Two Peers. Just hadn't never had come up, and so yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's another one of my dirty little secrets is going through people's Facebooks and looking at their SCA career. I sit and I just weep.
I do that too.
The community that shines through in all of these photographs, and the love that we have for each other, despite whatever drama or whatever goes on. There's this basic love and joy about the SCA that I really hope that we focus on. We have things to fix and we need to do that, but we also need to really focus on the joy.
Yeah, the community is what keeps us together at the end of the day. And I am also that person that goes through other people I don't even know. I'll just end up in some weird little Facebook rabbit hole, like looking at people's photos and being like, oh my God, that's an amazing experience. Also, always show me your vacation photos. I am fascinated by that stuff. I love seeing people's pictures and like, just getting a snapshot into their life, and I think that's really fun. So I'm weird, I know.
I think there's a cultural anthropology thing that is just people are fascinating, and seeing what people do is it's a beautiful gift to be able to share in that.
Yeah, it is. It totally is. I like that.
All right, so that's what we have to say about that.
It's a beautiful gift, everybody. Enjoy it.
Enjoy it. Tomorrow, Rifkin and I are interviewing Duchess Wren, who is a pelican and a knight of Ontier, and one of our favorite people. I have been her costumer for a long time, and I love her super fierce. And so that's going to be really fun, and we're looking forward to that. And Tulia, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ashaksi. It was so much fun. I really feel flattered you asked, and also this was a blast. So let's talk more.
I would love that. I'm looking forward to being able to see you both in person. And
oh, we're going to be up there. You know it. We will be up there, just all up in Ontier. Your second home.
I see it.
Yeah, like true Californians can't get rid of that.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Night.